In the brutal world of boxing, where speed, power, and precision define legends, there once stood a man who broke every rule the sport thought it understood. He didn't have the sculpted physique of a champion. He didn't move like Ali or jab like Foreman. But what he had was something far more terrifying: raw, unstoppable force. His name was Butterbean Esch, a man who defied all odds, crushed stereotypes, and turned the boxing world upside down. Even fighters like Mike Tyson, men built from chaos and violence, couldn't help but acknowledge the fearsome power of the man fans called the King of the Four Rounders. This is the story of how Butterbean became the most unlikely knockout artist in history, and why even the toughest men respected, and yes, feared him. Before Butterbean ever stepped into a ring, he was just an average guy from Jasper, Alabama, working normal jobs and carrying more weight than most athletes ever would. But what made him different wasn't his appearance, it was his heart. Growing up, he was bullied and ridiculed for his size. Instead of breaking him, it built him. Deep down, he had something to prove, not just to the world, but to himself. When he discovered boxing, everything changed. Inside that ring, his weight became his weapon. His calm demeanor turned into a storm, and every punch he threw carried the story of a man who refused to be defined by others' expectations. Butterbean's rise was like something out of a movie. He started his career in Toughman competitions, brutal, short fights where amateurs traded blows until one man fell. It didn't take long for the crowd to realize that Butterbean wasn't like the others. While most fighters tired after a round or two, he stayed calm, calculating, and then, with one devastating swing, ended the fight in an instant. His knockouts became legend, the kind that sent shockwaves through small-town arenas and drew headlines across the country. The fattest knockout artist wasn't a joke anymore. He was a phenomenon. By the time he entered professional boxing, Butterbean had already built a reputation as an entertainer and a destroyer. Fans loved him not just for his power, but for his personality. He was approachable, funny, and surprisingly humble. But once the bell rang, everything changed. The man who smiled during interviews transformed into a wrecking machine, launching thunderous right hands that could drop even the toughest opponents. He didn't dance, he didn't dodge, he simply walked forward, fearless and unshakable, like a tank. And in a sport that often glorified finesse, Butterbean reminded everyone that pure strength, will, and timing could be just as lethal. His fights became must-see events. Crowds packed arenas to witness the spectacle. Commentators called him a real-life cartoon character, but their laughter always turned to shock once he started swinging. Opponents who underestimated him rarely made it past the second round. His hands were like sledgehammers and his chin, a wall of granite. Every time Butterbean entered the ring, fans knew they weren't just watching a fight. They were watching a demolition. But what made Butterbean truly special was how he embraced who he was. He didn't try to become someone else. He didn't hide his weight or make excuses for his body. He leaned into it, made it part of his identity, and turned it into his brand. That authenticity made him beloved by fans and respected by fighters. Even those who laughed at him early on learned to fear that right hand. And when word spread that even Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, had acknowledged Butterbean's terrifying knockout power, it solidified his place in boxing lore. Butterbean's fame exploded beyond boxing. He became a pop culture icon, appearing in movies, TV shows, and even professional wrestling. But behind the fame was still a fighter, a man who loved the thrill of competition and the roar of the crowd. His fights weren't just about winning. They were about proving that greatness doesn't come in one shape or size. And he proved it every time he stepped into the ring. Of course, the boxing establishment never quite knew what to do with him. Critics dismissed him as a sideshow, a novelty act. But those critics never took a punch from him. Those who did would never forget it. Butterbean's record spoke for itself. A mountain of knockouts, a career defined by raw aggression and charisma. He fought with the kind of fearlessness that made people question how a man his size could move with such ferocity. One of his most memorable moments came against Johnny Knoxville in the movie Jackass, the movie. It was supposed to be a stunt, a bit of entertainment. But the second Butterbean's punch landed, Knoxville was out cold, his body collapsing like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The crowd gasped, and even Butterbean looked concerned. It was a brutal reminder that behind the smiles and laughs, this man carried real power, power that could end fights in a single heartbeat. As the years went on, Butterbean's career evolved. He tried his hand at kickboxing, MMA, and even bare-knuckle fighting. Each time, he brought the same intensity, the same grit, and the same unstoppable drive. Even when age and exhaustion began to slow him down, his legacy only grew stronger. He wasn't just a fighter, he was an idea, proof that determination and self-belief can overcome any obstacle. And then there was that lingering question. What would have happened if Butterbean and Mike Tyson ever faced each other in their primes? Fans debated it endlessly. Tyson, with his speed, precision, and deadly aggression. Butterbean, with his iron chin and devastating power. It would have been a collision of two worlds, the polished champion versus the unorthodox powerhouse. And while the fight never happened, the respect between them was real. Tyson once admitted that Butterbean's knockout power was nothing to joke about, and coming from the most feared heavyweight in history, that meant everything. In the end, Butterbean's story isn't just about boxing. It's about resilience, self-acceptance, and defying expectations. He took what made him different and turned it into greatness. He stood in front of critics, doubters, and even legends, and proved that you don't need to look like a fighter to be one. His legacy continues to inspire athletes, underdogs, and dreamers everywhere who've ever been told they couldn't make it. Even now, years after his final fights, Butterbean remains a beloved figure. His name brings smiles, laughter, and admiration, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. He fought his battles his way, and he earned every ounce of respect that came his way. So what do you think? Could anyone in boxing today carry the same combination of power, charm, and grit that Butterbean had? And if Tyson and Butterbean had ever stepped into the same ring, who would have walked out the winner? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories from the wild world of boxing and beyond.